This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsahone, and it's Friday, and that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. In today's video, I'm looking at cards with a Jeskai color identity. To have a Jeskai color identity, a card has to have the red, blue, and white mana symbols appear somewhere on the card, while not having any other colored mana symbols on the card. In other words, a card can have a Jeskai color identity simply by having a Jeskai casting cost, but it can also get there if all three colors appear between the text box and the casting cost. In all, there are 35 cards that have a Jeskai color identity, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the 10 that have made the biggest impact at Magic's highest level of competition. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A top 8 at a Pro Tour, Players Tour, Mythic Invitational, Legacy, or Vintage Championship is worth 2 points, while a Grand Prix or Magic Fest top 8 is worth 1 point. Alright, let's get to the list. At number 10, I have Inspired Ultimatum. Every now and then we have sets based around wedges or shards, and that's what we had in Ikoria, Rise of Behemoths. That set had a cycle of super powerful ultimatums, which all do something pretty crazy, but are kind of hard to cast. In the case of Inspired Ultimatum, you get to do 5 damage to something, gain 5 life, and draw 5 cards. If you're allowed to untap after you cast this, it's going to be pretty hard for your opponent to win, and by letting you kill one of their creatures while you also gain life, it is more likely you'll make it to that next turn. Inspired Ultimatum's 1 point came in a Fires of Invention deck, a deck that doesn't actually have to be concerned about the challenging mana cost on the card. It was far from a regularly played card in that deck though, and now that Fires is banned in Standard, it's hard to imagine it gaining any more points. At number 9, it is Narsit, Enlightened Master. Tarkir Block was another wedge-focused set, and Narsit was the leader of the Jeskai clan on that plane. Narsit has a single point, just like Inspired Ultimatum, but I gave it the edge because it finished higher with its one Grand Prix top 8. Narsit has a crazy strong effect when she attacks, letting you cast as many as 4 spells for free off the top of your library. Narsit has a crazy strong effect when she attacks, letting you cast as many as 4 spells for free off the top of your library. She also has Hexproof and First Strike, both of which mean that she's likely to be able to attack without too much trouble. Narsit's 1 point came in a Jeskai Tempo deck in Standard. At number 8, we have another Narsit, this time in Planeswalker form, Narsit of the Ancient Way. As a Planeswalker, Narsit still is a big fan of non-creature spells since she produces extra mana to help you cast them, and has an ultimate that makes an emblem that lets you shock stuff. Her -2 is actually a little more flexible, as looting and discarding any non-land lets you damage something. Like Inspired Ultimatum, Narsit's points have all come in Fires of Invention decks. Once you can't cast spells, her loyalty abilities give you something you can still do, and that's pretty nice. Obviously, Fires is banned, and so far, Narsit hasn't found a new home. At number 7, it is Odds and Ends, a split card with a Jeskai identity. It has 2 points, just like Narsit of the Ancient Way, but it has more Pro Tour top 8s, so I use that as a tiebreaker. The odds half is pretty interesting, and is definitely the right way to design a coin flip card. This is because it does something for you regardless of how the coin flip turns out, since it either lets you counter an instant or sorcery spell, or lets you copy an instant or sorcery spell. Obviously, the effect is still random enough, you basically only ever want to do this on an opposing spell since countering your own spell would suck, but since this also has the ends side, it doesn't really matter that the odds side is situational. Don't get me wrong, ends is situational too, but anytime you put 2 situational effects on a single card, you're going to end up getting to use one of them much more often than you would if it was only one card or the other. Odds and Ends 1 Pro Tour top 8 came at a Ravnica block constructed Pro Tour, where it was featured in a Jeskai control deck. At number 6, it is Wild Research, which is a red tutor enchantment with a really interesting design. You can pay 1 generic and 1 white mana to search up any enchantment you want, but then you discard a card at random. You can also pay 1 generic mana and 1 blue mana to do the same thing, but for an instant. There aren't many cards in this game that can tutor repeatedly for such a low cost, but the random discard clause goes a long way towards making this card balanced. One of its top 8s came in the infamous Battle of Wits deck that Huey Jensen piloted to a top 8 in 2002. When you have a massive deck that's planning to win the game with a specific enchantment, it makes a lot of sense to run Wild Research. It also earned a Pro Tour top 8 in Extended in an Oath of Druids deck. That deck might have been a normal size, but it is very important that the deck find the eponymous enchantment, and Wild Research can help with that. At number 5, it is Lightning Angel. It has the exact same score as Wild Research, but I gave it the edge because it came in first at its Grand Prix top 8. Costing 3 different colors of mana in the early part of the game might seem a little tricky, but mana was good enough in its time that it wasn't that big of a problem. A 4 mana 3/4 with haste, vigilance, and flying is no joke, and is the kind of thing that can really turn a game around, since it simultaneously puts your opponent on a quick clock and gives you a sizable creature that can hold back your opponent's attackers. Lightning Angels had 2 runs through Standard, one from its original printing in Apocalypse, and again from a time-shifted reprint in Time Spiral. In both of those standards, she was featured in Jeskai control decks. At number 4, it is Jeskai Ascendancy. Each of the Tarkir clans got an Ascendancy, and they're all pretty fun. As we've already seen, Jeskai loves non-creature spells, and that continues here. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, your whole board gets +1/+1 and untaps, and you also get to loot. That's pretty potent. In Standard, it saw play in Jeskai Tokens decks, a deck that could go really wide with tokens, and all of the cards you had that made tokens also happened to be non-creature spells, so they all pumped your board and helped you loot if you had the Ascendancy in play. In addition to being nice in token decks, the Ascendancy also has some combo potential, and this has led to some additional points in Standard as well as some success in Modern. If you combine it with a bunch of mana-producing creatures, you can end up drawing your whole deck and producing a ton of mana, and making your mana creatures huge, and eventually you win the game with them. Ascendancy doesn't have any points since 2015, but it's kind of a fringe deck in Modern, so I don't think it's completely done yet. At number 3, it's Jeskai Charm. Just like all the clans got an Ascendancy, they also got a Charm, and keeping with Magic tradition, a Charm is a modal card with 3 options. Like most modal cards, each of these effects individually isn't exactly efficient. You can pay 3 mana to do 4 to a player or planeswalker, or give your whole board +1/+1 in lifelink, or time ebb an opposing creature. You're really only going to be doing 4 damage when it kills your opponent or their planeswalker. You're only going to pump your whole board and give it lifelink if your board has gone wide enough that it can either end the game on the spot or gain you enough life to win the race. And you're only going to time ebb a creature if your opponent has one that's worth getting rid of. Obviously, that last effect will likely have the most uses, but when the situation is right, the burn and board pump effect can be quite powerful too. Jeskai Charm gained all of its points in Jeskai decks in Standard, including in Jeskai Ascendancy decks, but it was also played in Jeskai Midrange and Control decks. At number 2, it is Soulfire Grandmaster, yet another Jeskai card from Tarkir block. In Fate Reforged, each clan got a monocolored creature who had a hybrid mana activated ability, and Jeskai got the Grandmaster. A baseline of a 2 mana 2/2 with lifelink is nice, especially when the card has a huge chunk of additional text. Giving all your spells lifelink is nice, since gaining life from all your damaging spells is no joke, and the activated ability lets you just put a spell back in your hand when you cast it. The ability is a bit expensive to be sure, but it is not a bad mana sink. Getting back your Lightning Strike, that is now basically a Lightning Helix, over and over again because you have the extra mana to do so, feels pretty good. The Grandmaster saw the most play in Jeskai midrange decks while it was in Standard, and it doesn't have any points since rotating. And at number 1, it is Mantis Rider, which makes Lightning Angel kind of sad. Sure, it has 1 less toughness, but it does everything else that Lightning Angel can do for 1 less mana, so that's a pretty awesome trade-off. Just like the Angel, the Rider gives you an evasive creature that puts your opponent on a quick clock, while it can also hang back and protect you if it also needs to do that. While in Standard, it was played in the various Jeskai decks we've already talked about, but what really gives it a huge lead on the other cards on this list is that it actually has points outside of Standard. In fact, it has way more points in Modern than it does in Standard. Ever since the Humans deck emerged in Modern, Mantis Rider has seen a ton of play there, since the deck has excellent mana and lots of human payoffs, and that makes Mantis Rider a great fit. It will continue to gain points in Modern in the future, and it has a huge lead over everything else, so I don't see the top spot on this list changing anytime soon. Well, those are the top 10 Jeskai cards. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG top 10s, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to catch up on the over 300 other MTG top 10s I've already done, you should see the playlist on your screen now. Thanks for watching.